So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. So, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sarah Ellis and I work in the Assessment Services team for Cambridge Assessment English. I'm actually based in Italy and I live outside Florence in a small town. Today's session is how to teach an exam class for pre-A1 starters, A1 movers and A2 flyers. And it's actually the first in a new series focusing on teaching exam classes. So we're starting obviously with the young learner tests, and then there will be other webinars after this one, also focusing on exam classes. So thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. So having a look at what we're going to do. I'd like to think about your teaching context. I'm very aware that we're in different situations and it would be useful to know a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. We're also going to look at being positive and how pre-A1 starters, A1 movers and A2 flyers can help keep students positive and also teachers to have some kind of goal to work towards and also some kind of sense of progress to help in perhaps these rather challenging times. We'll start by having a look at the resources for teachers and getting ready. These are resources provided by Cambridge Assessment English and they're from our website. I appreciate that you will have your own course book as well, but we're not going to talk about course books today. We're going to look at ideas and activities for developing vocabulary, obviously related to the 3 different levels. Now, because we're looking at 3 different levels, obviously I'm not going to be able to look at each part of every exam in detail. So I've chosen different parts of the exam and different activities to give you an overview of what things are included. We'll also be looking at ideas for developing language skills, again, considering the 3 different levels as well. We'll talk about knowing what to expect and why that's important and what you can do to help with your exam and preparation class to make sure that that's happening. And throughout, we're going to be talking about resources and we'll be looking at some of the places that you can find the resources and make sure that you have the links to those as well. Okay, so here we are, 2021, the start of a new year, a time of really uncertainty. And I appreciate that going back to school, as many people around the world are doing now after the Christmas break or the winter break, the situation may be very different for you. Some people may be teaching face-to-face, some of you may be in socially distanced classrooms, or even hybrid classrooms, so with some of the students in your class and some of them watching remotely. And of course, some of you may be teaching completely online, completely remotely. So I think that if, is your classroom, does it look like this in a socially distanced classroom or something similar? Maybe your students are wearing masks, of course, and of course there are lots of challenges around this start of the new year. So I'd like to ask you about you. I appreciate that some of you may be new to these tests and some of you may already be experienced. And we hope that during this session, there'll be ideas for those of you who are new and also those of you who may be looking for a refresher, if you like, get some new ideas or to think again about the tests. So as you will see, there is a poll. We'd like to ask you to tell us about your teaching and about your experience of the pre-A1 starters, A1 movers and A2 flyers tests. So I can see the answers whizzing in there. It's interesting at the moment, we've got about 71% of you only teaching online. So that's a lot of people doing that. And we've got about 8% teaching in a hybrid classroom and 16% actually teaching face-to-face. Of course, there are some people who are not sure yet, so we've got about 3% who are not quite sure what's happening. In terms of preparing for the tests, it's interesting to see that it's quite balanced. So about 37% preparing for pre-A1 starters, similar number for A2 flyers. And quite a lot of you are new, about 40% are new just to starters, and I'll show you these figures for those of you who are in the session. You might be able to see the poll. I'll just end that now. So thank you for doing that. And we can see 64% are only teaching online. So there, in fact, today's session will be talking about how to do things for your exam preparation classes in different situations, how you might be able to adapt the materials that I'm going to be talking about to whatever situation you find yourself in. It's interesting that a lot of you are preparing for starters and a lot of people are new to flyers. So thank you for doing that. It helps me have an idea. So this question is for you. What do a lot of people think about when they think about exams? And this is a picture, I think, that many people will think about exams. Now, of course, when we talk about young learners, we need them to be looking like this when we're talking about exams. It's very important that young learners actually enjoy taking a test and they know what to do, so they're ready and prepared, they know what to expect, and that they know, particularly with these tests, that they will be rewarded for what they know, not what they don't know. So that's a very important part of it. And it's important that that is clear, right, throughout your exam preparation course, that they're looking at what they know, not what they don't know. And of course, that means that they will start their learning journey with life skills of taking a test, hopefully with a much more positive experience as a result of working with you and doing these preparation classes. So assessing young learners can be fun and can be motivating. And as I said, at the moment, it can be used as a way of having a sense of progress. It can have a direction, a goal, and of course, it's about rewarding students for what they know. So fun, making the exam preparation fun, motivating, positive, and encouraging. And we'll look at ways to do that throughout the session. Now, every child who takes one of these tests is given a certificate. So there's no pass or fail because it's about what they can do. So they would have a certificate that looks something like this. You can see there's a shields for different skills, and it's not a score. And that's, again, to emphasize a sense of what they can do. And all the children are given. So everyone can feel a sense of progression. And of course, parents are also pleased to see that their children are being encouraged in their English skills. We're building those steps towards the future. You can do the tests individually. You don't have to do all three. The tests are designed for 7 to 12-year-olds, just to give you an idea. We'll talk about that a bit more. Now, thinking about language skills in the classroom and learning a language, obviously, we're going to be looking at 4 skills. And in any primary classroom learning English, you would expect that the 4 skills will be there. Now, if we look at the order of the 4 skills here, can anyone tell me why they're in this particular order? Okay, there you are. So that was very quick, Maria. Thank you. The language acquisition. Absolutely. So we do tend to start with listening, especially as younger learners, and move through these kind of learning these different skills. But of course, in the classroom, we need to make sure that we're covering all 4 skills. And in the real world, 4 skills are not isolated. They're very much, they occur together, or they're interlinked. Now, in the pre-A1 starters, A1 moves and A2 flyers, of course, the tests include 4 skills. They're aligned to the CFR, and of course, as I said, they're designed for children between 7 and 12. And you can decide whichever level you want to do, depending on your context and your children, of course. So, thinking about how an exam class can actually help keep us positive. If we look at the materials that are used in the test, and these are test materials, you can see how colourful they are, how children-friendly they are. They include activities which you might use in learning activities, and you might be doing them anyway as a part of your learning, which of course is actually part of the design of these tests, which is to make learning fun, designed to kind of close the distance between learning and testing, so that the child's experience of learning and testing is enjoyable, fun, relevant, and accessible. So in your exam classes with these levels, the idea is that teachers should familiarize children with what the exam format is about, but actually continue your normal teaching program, which of course will have many activities which are similar to the test. The child needs to know what to expect, and that way, of course, they can do their best and enjoy the experience, which I think at the moment is very important for many children. Now let's start with the teacher and getting ready for those exam preparation classes. And of course, there's a basic toolkit of what you will be using. As I said, many of you will have a course book, but also these resources will help support you with your course and particularly with your exam preparation. So the first place to start is the handbook for teachers, which you can download for free, which basically will give you all the information you could possibly need about what's in the exam. There is a full vocabulary list, which is in an alphabetical order for each level of the test. There is a list of the grammar and structure that is included, and there is information about each part of the exam, including tips for preparation on each part of the exam, suggestions. There are links if you use the handbook online, you'll find there are links which actually take you also to other resources, for example, to the more extensive word list that I'll talk about in a minute. So if you're a new teacher, of course, this is fundamentally important. But I also think if you're an experienced teacher, every now and again to go back to the handbook and look at what's being tested and ideas for how you might be doing it. It might remind you of some of the aspects that maybe you haven't been focusing on recently. I find it very useful to keep going back. And of course, there are sample papers. Again, these are in full color. And you can also access the audio that go with the sample papers. And this, of course, will show the students what the exam's like. Now, in the handbook for teachers, you will also find statements about what students can do at each level. These are taken, of course, from the Common European Framework of Reference, the CFR, and you will see that you can find them in the handbook, but you can also find and download a PDF which has a child-friendly statements of can-do statements for each level. And we'll make sure you have a link to this. But you can see for each level what the level of each skill is included. Also, the idea is that you build from one exam to the other. So what you do in movers also includes what you will have done in starters. If you haven't taken the test, that's not a problem, but you need to make sure that you know what's included in the level before, because you're building that step by step and confidence and language skills. So this exam practice and exam classes are about engaging your students at this level, making it fun, making it motivating, helping them have variety, covering those 4 skills, and making it success-oriented. Very much about what you can do and encouraging students to see that they are making progress. Now, in the next part, I'm going to look at different aspects of the test, and we'll cover areas which you may be able to use in any level. So we'll start with listening. And as we said, actually, it's a very important part of learning languages, actually doing listening and making sure you're exposed to listening. And also we can see how it's tested in the tests. So I've got an example for starters and movers, and flyers, as you can see here. And in the middle, the movers part 1 is very similar to. And what you will see is there is actually task progression. So you'll find some tasks are repeated, but across the levels. So the task is the same, but of course the content reflects the level. So we'll see that the vocabulary in the starters picture is slightly easier than obviously the vocabulary expected in the flyers. Now, they're designed to be fun, so the idea is that they're going to be listening and drawing lines in this particular activity. And they listen for a description and then identify the person being described. The idea is that also we're looking at vocabulary of descriptions of people and activity verbs as well. Now, I think that these materials are amazing because you can also use them not just for the exam task, but also you can see how they're also opportunities for learning. So if we take the picture from the A2's Day 1 starters, we can think about the activity verbs. And so before we even do the listening task, we might be focusing on that. So I always encourage students to use mime as well. So there's a boy holding a cat. And I would get them to do this with me. Of course, if you're teaching online, one of the benefits of doing actions is that you can mute the students, but see them participating. And they can say the words, copy your words without disturbing the whole class, but they can have the confidence to do it. So the boy is holding a cat. The boy has a kite. And you do the actions. The girl is reading a book. The girl is reading a book, and you can imagine doing the repetition. The girl is giving bread to the ducks. The girl is giving bread to the ducks. And then, of course, we can also turn on the microphone and then hear them say it as well. But we're preparing for the listening task as well. You will see that in the handbook, you also have the tape script, and the tape script allows you, of course, if you want to use the tape script, perhaps after the listening to focus on the language, you have that available to you. And for the teacher, it means you really know what's there. The instructions are very clear and they're repeated, as you can see, and they will be the same for every part 1. So children need to learn how the task is done. So the other thing you will notice is that they have names around the picture. Now, appreciate that children won't necessarily know those names, and they won't necessarily know whether they are boys or girls. So simple activity is, of course, to use the names and get the children, again, particularly if you're teaching online, you can do something physical, you can see what your students are doing and whether they're with you. So if I say Jane, you would touch your ears. If I say Ben, touch your head. If I say Mary, unfortunately I can't see you, so I can't check, but let's hope you're doing the actions too, and Peter, etc. But again, it's a way to help the students be familiar with the names. Now, important thing about the names is the names are included in the word list, so you know exactly what names are included at which levels. So if you're preparing students for starters, they need to be familiar with these names. No other names than those will be used. So you can be, again, the information for the teacher is complete. You really have everything you need to know about the test. So if you do movers, you obviously need to know the names for starters as well, because they could be included. But you can see how that is very clear for the teacher as well. So we take an example from movers, again, part 1, speaking, and let's have a look what we can do with the material, as well as obviously use it for the test part. Looking at the picture, you get students to think of find all the things that begin with the letter W. And of course, we've got quite a few there. You might want to write them in the chat. It might keep you actively involved. But if you can see what words begin with W in that picture. Great, thank you. Fantastic. We've got wrap, that's a good one. Wheels, etc. So we've got some ideas coming in there. So that's just one part. And then of course we can extend that by obviously getting them to complete a sentence with the word. So you can just see there are some very simple ones. I could use the sentences to elicit the words if they haven't guessed them themselves. So again, depending on the level of your students, if they need more support or less support. And of course, we have the answer key. And again, we've got the chance to talk about the picture. A woman is on the ladder, again, repetition, and you might use mime with it as well. Then you can extend it. If you're in a face-to-face classroom, you might have groups working on a different letter. If you're online, depending on whether you can use breakout rooms, you might not, or you might use your whiteboard and actually get the groups to write on the particular part of the online board with their words. So again, there are different ways to do this activity. And again, always can you see anyone? The good news is the material I'm showing you is from a lesson plan that you will be able to download and use yourself. And we'll show you that in a moment. So extending it from the vocabulary, we can then look at talking about the picture or reading about the picture. So we have some sentences, and you can get your students to read and say whether the sentence is correct or not. Now, if you're teaching online, of course, you might use something physical. So is the girl is wearing a hat? Again, it allows you, especially if you're teaching remotely, to be able to involve the class and have an idea of how people are doing. If they haven't got that, they can use their left hand or a pencil or a pen so that you have a way to see whether it's right or wrong. And I think that's very involving, engaging. So those are statements about the picture. And once you've done that, then where the statement was incorrect, you could ask them to write the correct sentence. Obviously, you've chosen the ones to do there. Now, I decided to extend it to use the same task using Kahoot. So I made a Kahoot for the birthday party picture, which you're very welcome to use. So it does exist, so you can actually access it. And I put those same sentences into the Kahoot so that if I want to recycle it, I can, having done it this way, I can now do it again in a different way. So here you've got the same sentences. The girl is opening a present, is wearing a hat, and obviously they do true or false according to the sentence. But you can see how easy it is, and it's easy also to create your own if you wish to. But it is a good moment for me to mention that Cambridge Assessment English actually has some work in collaboration with Kahoot, got some fantastic materials available for these tests. Those are just 3. In fact, you can see here on this screen, there's a lot of selection, so you can choose the level that's of interest to you. And again, obviously all designed to be using the vocabulary list, the word list for each level, and the structure list for each level. This is the lesson plan that I've developed from, and it, as you can see, it has the lesson stages, it has ideas if you're teaching online, and again, it has resources that you can just download and use yourself. So things like the colours, obviously colouring pictures to practice those, and the material that I just showed you with the words. Now, important thing of listening is doing as much listening as you can, and perhaps doing variety. It's important they can hear you. You're obviously an important source of listening, as well as the recordings. But also, why not also use the songs that are available from Cambridge English? There are different levels. It's a bit like a karaoke, obviously considering the language appropriate for the levels. There are information for learning activities related to it, and it may be that in some circumstances you may be able to actually ask parents to help with this as well. We'll make sure that you have the links to these resources today and also in the follow-up to this session. So having looked a bit at listening, I want to focus on vocabulary. A very important part of preparing exam preparation classes is making sure that you focus on vocabulary. Now, the good thing about the vocabulary, as I said, as you saw with the names, is the availability of the word lists. Now, this is extra to the handbook. In the handbook, they're alphabetical. You can also download this PDF of word lists where they're alphabetical, but also the thing that I like the most is they're also topic-based. As well as the word list, there are picture books, which again, you can download for free. And these are cover some of the topics that you will find in the word list, not every one. So but again, useful to supplement what you already have. This is an example of the word list for animals. Of course, every primary child needs to look at animals, and you will see that there are animals from different parts of the world. So there's also a bit of interest culturally as well. And we can see, obviously, simple activities, just like identifying the picture and word, matching the word and the picture. Again, if you're doing this online, you might be using Annotate with stamps. And of course, if you're doing it in the classroom, you might have a worksheet. So different ways to deliver it. Other simple things, put on the board, whether that's your online board or your in your classroom, a few of the words, ask them to put it in alphabetical order, practice the spelling, and also simple things where you get them to process it, which I think helps you remember vocabulary. For example, put these words from the smallest animal to the biggest animal, or from the biggest animal to the smallest animal, so they have to reorder them. So very simple category tasks that you can do very quickly. Here you can see how the word list develops across those 3 levels. And again, by the time you get to flyers, you also need to have covered the other 2 levels. We seem to have been muted. Sorry about that. So we would like before you show the picture, you might like to dictate 3 or 4 sentences. So if something as simple as, the snake is on the ground, they write the sentence. The elephant is very small. There are 3 white goats. Then you show them the picture and they check whether obviously the sentence they wrote is right or wrong according to the picture. So again, obviously finding ways to reinforce vocabulary in as many different activities as possible is important. And you can see how you can exploit the same material in different ways. Now, again, they're available to download are a set of flashcards. Sorry, I'll take you back to that one just for a moment. You get the picture and the word. And if you're online again, you can hold up the picture and the word, and they can tell you if the word and the picture are the same or different. Again, so you can involve them. But there are lots of things you can do with flashcards. The flashcards are available for each level to download. And again, we'll make sure you've got access to those. And here's just another topic. So we're looking at clothes and of course, all those things that we did before with animals. And again, thinking of categorizing. So you've done a bit of matching, you've done looking at spelling, but also processing the words so that they're actually beginning to put them into their active vocabulary. So if you think of which of the clothes you wear in warm weather, which the wear in cold weather, etc. So having looked a little bit at listening, vocabulary, which is an important feature of all parts of the test, let's have a little focus on some of the skills work to do. So reading and writing. We haven't got time to go through each part. You will be able to see each part in the sample papers in the handbooks, but I've selected a few things to have a look at. So I've selected part 3 in starters, and you can see that it's very scaffolded. It looks almost like a game because, of course, the children see that they have the letters, they have a picture, and they have to reorder the mixed pictures. So there's a lot of scaffolding, again, recognizing the linguistic skills of the age group and the cognitive skills to give them right support so that they obviously can enjoy the task as well. And of course, if we look at movers and flyers, you can see how this development of vocabulary evolves. And we have movers, you're reading descriptions of a word. So if you like, early dictionary skills. So they read the description and have to match it to the picture. So again, there's a lot of scaffolding, a lot of help, which helps the students. They have to copy the word correctly, but they're given some help. Now, when we get to flyers, A2 flyers, obviously there are now 10 questions for them to do. They're again reading descriptions of the word. So if you like, they're beginning to learn to do definitions of words and paraphrase as well, if you like. So again, an important skill, but this is part of the test. So you can see interesting, motivating activities here. Now, if we look at A2, an example for how you might extend that practice of those dictionary definitions or matching the definition, there's an activity using crosswords, but the reason I'm showing you this is I particularly like the way the support is provided in the clues, because the clue has been written and the student has to obviously reorder the words to make the clue. before they work with their partner. So some have got the across clues, and of course there are also pictures to help, so we can see in that milk or some people put milk or lemon in this drink. You can obviously see the cup of tea, and it's got the same number of letters. So lots of support, and this material is part of a lesson plan that you can download. There are lesson plans for almost every single part of each of the young learner tests. So you'll be able to find something that helps you in the preparation for your exam class. You won't be able to read that in detail, but you can see how much detail there is for the lesson plan, with ideas for teaching in face-to-face and also teaching online, which is very important. And these resources are downloadable, so you have the activity ready-made for you. Now, that's the lesson plans, but there are also other resources available in a PDF of classroom activities. Now, the PDF work with the picture book and the word list, and also classroom posters, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. But this is just an example. You can see how the task is absolutely like the kind of task that the task they have in the test, but it's obviously more practice for them. And also, if you want to extend it yourself, you've obviously got the word list. You can choose words from the word and make word games, and I'm sure many of you already do. But I just wanted to share with you one of the apps that I found useful, which is Flippity, where you can create a word Scrabble, like in the test. Now, I'd be very interested if you could share any other apps that you're using to do things like this, so that other people can see and get ideas from the chat. So if you do have any particular apps, and I can see beginning to start, so thank you. Do share any apps that you're using that you're finding useful. So this is Flippity, and Flippity allows you to do things like word search. I chose the words. Flippity made me the word search. It gives me the key as well, so I don't have to worry about finding the words. So it's really good, and you can see different activities that you could actually use other than the ones I've just mentioned. But again, it's another resource for you. We move into the classroom activities also related to the posters, but obviously this is a reading task as well as recognition of vocabulary. And again, recognizing lower levels, there's not a lot of writing, but you can see how the pictures are supporting the tasks. When you get to flyers, the pictures support slightly less, but actually at starters and movers, they will usually find the answer in the picture. So we've got, again, if you're doing this online, we were talking about ticks, yes and no, but why not yes and no as well, so that you can engage the students. And if you're monitoring a full class, you've got more of an idea if you're doing it online. There are other variations. So this is from the starters, part 2. Again, you can see how the students are using the picture to read a sentence and then find the answer according to the picture. So you can see how that works. Now, you might want to extend it by getting the students to write their own new sentences and get them to say, write a sentence which is not right, and then of course swap. But you can see how the exam task itself can be extended to increase the amount of language practice. And I can see lots of people sharing ideas, so that's great. Please do that. It's really very helpful. Thank you. When we look at the starters, we're looking really more at word level and sentence level. We move towards movers and flyers. Obviously, the texts are going to get longer and the tasks that they're doing are going to be slightly different. So here we have gap fill, but we do have, again, support. So the students will be able to complete the task. They need to know that there are 4 extra words that they don't need to use. So it's not just about guessing. They need to read the text, and they were also asked to give a title to the text. So you can see how reading skills need to start to develop. So what you can do, of course, is look at the pre-work. So this particular task is about a story of children reading about different animals in their school library. And so we can potentially do some activities before they look at the text. So again, revising the words, the vocabulary of animals, perhaps doing adjectives to describe whether they're big, small, strong, etc. So and the kind of activities, whether they fly, whether they swim, etc. And again, I've taken this from a lesson plan, so you will be able to absolutely use it yourself if you wish. And it leads into the text that I just showed you. So we've talked about the vocabulary, then we can go to the text and perhaps get the students to identify the animal words in the text without worrying about too much about the text yet, but they're beginning to meet the text, if you like, and start looking at the topic. And then having warmed them up to that, then they might be looking at the task. And again, you can see how that's scaffolded. So classroom activities also focus on the classroom posters. So you've got word list posters and obviously the word list in general. This is one from starters. There are a couple per level, and of course a very useful topic at school. And you can actually see there are 3 scenes or 4 scenes, 5 scenes within the poster, which allow lots of different activities. The activity list, apart from using the poster itself, you can also use the activities from that activity PDF, including things like labeling the picture. And again, similar to the reading that we just saw, using a word bank, and all this is downloadable. Now, I'm a real fan of the posters, and if you can display them in your classroom, great. And if you can't, of course, one of the advantages of being on remote is that you can see it very well on the screen. Students can use their annotate, perhaps indicate things as well if you wanted to do something like that. I like to get them to do very simple tasks like how many things beginning with the letter B can you see? So I'm going to ask you. So just involve you. How many things in this poster can you see beginning with the letter B? Would you like to write it in the chat, please? And exactly, some people are saying, what nice pictures. Oh, they're fantastic pictures. Exactly, we've got bananas and birds and etc. Benches, exactly, so lovely. Bank, bus station, bus, yes, lovely. Thank you for taking part in that. But you get the point. It's very easy to use that. Now, I've taken another activity, so you can see little bits of the poster in the picture, and it's focusing obviously on the vocabulary of the town. So we can do that first. Then we can uncover the other part of the task, and they can look at the action words connected to the places. And then we could get them to go back to the poster, identify where those people were, and remember the information. So again, you can recycle and do different things with the poster. You can also, so apart from what are people doing and who is doing what, which where, how many, what color, getting them pointing, getting them using, if you're online again, as I said, annotate, is just super. Ask them to tell you what they would like to know about, what words would they like to know. So again, useful. What can they say or write about the picture? So again, practicing speaking, practicing writing, and recycling vocabulary. And what happened before, what happened after was also a little bit of imagination as well, creativity. And what can't you see? Again, perhaps beyond the edge of the picture. What do you think's after that? What's at the end of the road? What do you think's over on the right, etc. So having looked a little bit at listening, a little bit at vocabulary, and obviously looking at some of those resources, I want to, and for reading as well, let's have a little look at writing. Now, writing, again, all the tasks are related to some kind of picture. So a lot of the work that we've already been doing is relevant here. So you're going to be looking at the vocabulary in the picture, the action verbs in the picture, the prepositions in the picture, etc. Now, at starters levels, the writing, as I said before, is very minimal, word level and sentence level. We've moved to movers, and you'll see here the type of questions that we're doing are related to the picture. So here we've got just finishing, we're completing with a word or a few words, the sentence, answering a question. You can see here the actual exam question. And again, it's scaffolded from very very controlled, if you like, to slightly wider, a slightly more demanding task as we go through. So talking, answering questions, and then writing your own sentences about the picture. Now, of course, if children are used to talking about the picture, they're not going to find this task difficult. They're going to have ideas about what to write about. It's very important as a teacher in exam preparation to make sure the children understand that they need to answer the questions according to the picture. It can't just be a sentence that they've remembered. It has to be related to the picture. So in A2, where we're now looking at assessing their ability for narration and linking, you'll see there is this picture story. They're given 3 pictures and obviously have to narrate the story. Children obviously need help to start having ideas and being able to structure so that they remember to say something about each picture and they look at how to connect it. So again, in the exam preparation, it's giving them that confidence, showing them what to do, and doing activities like this one where you build up the vocabulary for the character. You've got some three nouns or verbs, and you build up the vocabulary, which then they might use in their story. You don't have to use all of it, but again, it's helping them have some support before that you ask them to do the writing. If you're doing stories, of course, the flashcards that I mentioned earlier also have, you could use them in different ways to create a story. And some of them are actually a story in themselves, like this one I'm showing you from Movers, where it has some characters and it has some vocabulary for them to use in the story. So again, if you're doing it online, you probably can move it around. If you're in a classroom, then you may have the option to chop up the flashcards and do different things. So making sure that we cover all the 4 skills, I'd like to look at speaking now. So having looked at listening, looked at vocabulary, looked at reading, and a little bit about writing, hopefully that starts to give you a flavour of the kind of communicative emphasis, the idea of focusing on message and meaning and using context in child-friendly situations as well. Now, the speaking test is taken with 1 child and 1 examiner. I will show you where you can see examples of that in a moment. But the speaking, of course, is also getting them to talk about themselves. You can use the flashcards to create activities such as this one. So we've got obviously a vocabulary group set, and the children, you can use it to elicit the question, elicit the questions using these as well. What's your favorite? Again, nice pictures, useful to recycle the vocabulary. My favorite sport is football. I play every week. You know, of course, you can extend it depending on the level. Again, I like, I don't like, etc., and as well as the vocabulary. Now, another tool that I've started using recently is Pick a Wheel. The last part of each test, the child is asked some question about themselves. These questions are actually designed for A2 flyers, but you get the idea. You could do something similar for the low levels too. I'm not doing it online, but I've done a screenshot so you can see. You press the spin word, it spins it round, and it randomly picks a question. So the problem of always having to do, practice the same questions, this helps you because they have to wait for the computer to show you which question it's chosen. So it's really easy to use. And of course, you can create a pick a wheel for your questions. It's very simple. And I always say, if I can do it, it must be simple. Again, it's a free resource that you can use. The posters, of course, also lend themselves to extended speaking. And if we look at flyers, where we might want to ask them to say more things, you can have questions which remind them about the topic, but also extend it as well. So we've got questions about the town from the poster that we saw earlier, questions about your country, what you like, what you don't like, and this one is about the countryside. So again, little snippets of the poster can be used to stimulate speaking activities or even writing activities. This one is, again, from the classroom activities booklet. Now, in movers and flyers, children are asked to tell a little story, and they're given some pictures to help them with the story. and the examiner will start. You'll see they're given the names and the pictures. Will start saying, these pictures tell a story. It's called Brave Teacher. Look at the pictures first, and so the child has time to look. Nick and Anna are looking out of the classroom window. The teacher is not very happy because they're not doing their work. Would you like to continue the story? Now that's the exam task, and they will obviously narrate the story in any way that they think is appropriate, using the pictures for their story. However, I think storytelling is a great way to practice, and I think that we can use the story, narrate the story ourselves, and get the students to be involved, perhaps by using mime. So the children looked out the window, they saw a cat in the tree, and if you repeat the story several times using the actions, then ask them to tell the story, they're kind of getting a model, and also they're listening to you, they're getting involved in the story, and it certainly doesn't feel like an exam task. I also take away some of the pictures and say, okay, let's have a look at the beginning of the story, and what do you think happens next? So the teacher goes out into the garden, the cat's in the tree. What do you think happens next? So let's get them using their imagination, and of course being involved more in story, and then perhaps telling the story as well. So storytelling is a part for the speaking and the writing, as you can see, and it's an opportunity for language development as well. And getting them involved in storytelling is a good way to revise vocabulary. And for shy students, if you're doing it remotely without your sound off, of course they can do the activities and be engaged. Now, I also want just to mention that especially, but not only, if you're teaching remotely, hearing all the children may be a bit of a challenge. So you might get your students, if it's appropriate and if the parents approve, to record themselves, maybe on their phone if they have one, and if not, using a voice app like this one. Voice Spice, again, I'm showing you apps which are available freely, and they can record and then send a link to you so that you can hear what they do. So this is one, and some of you may be familiar with Wockaroo. There are others. You can use Flipgrid if you also want to use a video. But again, if you haven't, thank you. Some people are contributing their ideas as well. So thank you for doing that. So there may be other resources. So, of course, it's very important, as I said at the beginning, that the children know what to expect. Also, it's important that the teacher knows what to expect so they can help your students feel more confident. So I go back to the fact that the handbook really helps the teacher understand. The sample papers are useful for the students to be aware of the tasks. Obviously, during your course, you'll be using different tasks, but they will also need to see what it looks like in the complete test. And you can obviously use these sample papers as well as any other course book material or test material that you might be using generally. So it gives them an idea of what to expect. But I also think they need to think, especially as they get towards movers and flyers, a little bit about the time management as well. So just make them a little bit more aware of how long it takes them to do their writing, for example. Now, when we come to speaking, the good news is that you can download or watch on YouTube, on the Cambridge English TV YouTube channel. There are samples of the speaking tests. Now, I think this is really encouraging. Also, if you want to show it to parents so they know what this is about, what their children will do. And you can see that it's one examiner and one candidate. The examiner is trained to be friendly and smiley, and the child will know what to do because you've shown what they would expect. So using these videos, you can watch children take the test, and you can also download for yourself information about how the candidate performs, what are the tips, what are the comments, which I think is really very helpful. And again, you may show those to your students without necessarily talking about the grading, but you might want to, but so that they know what to expect when they go to the test. So very practical advice. Now, if you want some more help, a new tool just made available now for Pre-A1 starters, A1 movers and A2 flyers, is this exam preparation planner. Now, the exam preparation planner finds the resources from the Cambridge Assessment English website and puts them into a kind of plan for you. What do I mean by that? Let me just show you very briefly. When you go to weekly, you will find that you're asked which exam you're interested in, how many teaching weeks you have available, and how many exam hours you have per week. So you put in whatever is appropriate for you. You click the Build My Plan, and it will ask you about your learning objectives. So you can actually change the order by using the upward arrows or dragging the skills that you want to put more emphasis on. Then when you press the, when you press the pink Build My Plan, you will find you get a weekly plan with free resources. And if you click on any of those, it will take you directly to the resource. You can also move the resources between the weeks if perhaps you haven't got enough time to do it this week, you want to do it later in the course, so you can actually move it around. But these are suggestions for you, and you can see that there are obviously focus on the exam skills and the sample papers and resources. There's also support for you, so information particularly about you for the word lists or whatever. So for example, I clicked on all skills and it took me to these different resources. So I'll just leave you with that. So that's a tool that you can use to supplement your course book if you like. And of course you can print it out, you can monitor how what you're making progress with the resources that you've got. So in this short time, I hope I showed you that actually preparing for pre-A1 starters, A1 movers and A2 flyers can be very motivating. It can help students feel that they've got a sense of progress. For a teacher, it really gives you clear direction, or you've got all the resources you need to be well informed and to help students enjoy their English and feel a sense of motivation and achievement, because it's what they know, not what they don't know. Again, I hope I've showed you some of the resources that are available for teachers, which will help you feel well informed for your exam preparation courses. You could see how important vocabulary is in these tests, and obviously at these levels it's very important to develop vocabulary, and hopefully you will have got some ideas of different activities for doing this, and also ideas for developing those language skills. And it's very important to make sure that we are working on the 4 skills and making sure that students are aware of what they need to do for each part of the test. Knowing what to expect is key. It will help the students feel more confident when they go to the test. They know what to expect. They will feel ready and much better position to enjoy it as well. So the resources, as you can see, are quite extensive. Obviously, I haven't had time to show you all of them, but I hope you got an idea. There are lots to explore, and I've actually want to show you where you will find some of those from the website. So this is from, when you go into the website, you'll find the new English classroom. And if you go to the section that's called Teaching English Online, it will actually take you to a teacher support pack, which is interactive. And you can look at this. Is not just for young learners, it's for other levels as well. And you can find the young learner resources in one easy to find place. So you've got the handbooks, the lesson plans, the sample papers, the speaking videos that mentioned, etc., as you can see. And you can also access the resources per exam level. And I particularly like these because they're digital posters. And if you click, you can see the exam preparation list. If you click on any of those resources there, it will take you straight away. It also reminds you in one simple place what's available. And you might find something, even if you're experienced, you might find some of the materials that you didn't know, or you didn't know how to find them. So I hope that's useful. This is the Padlet I created, and I invite you to join to easily find some of the resources I've mentioned, plus a few extra ones that I didn't have time to cover. And I hope that will be useful for you. So we've come to the end of the session, and I haven't been able to look at the chat too very much, but I've just got a little bit of time to have a look at some of the questions that you have put in the question and answer. One question that we had was, do you have to take every level? I think I said that before, but no, you take the level that is appropriate. The age range is roughly 7 to 12, and you, again, you can take whichever one is appropriate for your students. So if you're teaching only one skill, then obviously that means that we need to have a look at making sure you're including all 4 skills. Where can you download the handbook? Hopefully you'll be able to have the links now. So we need to have a look. So where the links, lots of questions about the link and the lesson plans, which we will make sure you have. The activity for making crosswords is included on the Padlet. And let's have a look. If they're sitting, face-to-face oral exams, how should the sitting be in regard